U.S. Supreme Court overturns New York handgun law in bitter blow to gun control push. And of course, we never use gun control. That is a meme pathogen, and idiots use it. I mean, and people who are recovering from idiocy. So if you are using the anti-white concept, gun control, you need to stop using it right away. Biden says ruling should trouble us all as conservative majority, trouble all of those who want to do things to the population that a population might resist. And if they have the means to resist, they may well do so. And so anybody talking like President Mortis, rigor mortis to you, the corpse in chief, anybody talking to you that way, you should immediately think to yourself, what is it that they would like to do? That they are so afraid that I have the right to self-defense? What is up their sleeve? Forget about this talk. Forget about it. That, oh, we're going to keep somebody safe if we just deprive you of all your liberties. For God's sake, pull your head out of your ass. Especially not all ladies, but so many ladies out there. It's like some children get hurt and they're like, oh, it'll be okay. Tyrants show right up. They're like, pat the lady on her shoulder. It'll be okay. Now, if you just give up all of your liberties that just uncountable men, white men, paid for, died for, were maimed for, if you just give up all of those liberties to us, we'll make sure that your little ones are safe. As though they're being honest there. And then the women say what? And the women of both sexes, they say what? Oh, yeah, sure, take all of our liberties. As though much, much worse to little Johnny and little Susie won't happen once you give up your liberties to the kind of people who would take them from you. You know, the person who doesn't, a rightful leader, a rightful ruler, doesn't mind that you have the right to self-defense and the tools of self-defense. Keep that in mind. Only those who want to do things to you that you might have recourse to those tools of self-defense. The Supreme Court said, though, of course, that no, you cannot require people to have a good reason to be able to exercise self-defense. The U.S. Supreme Court has opened the door for almost all law-abiding Americans to carry concealed and loaded handguns in public. Oh my gosh. After the conservative majority struck down a New York law that placed strict restrictions on firearms outside the home. And this is coming from the anti-white Guardian. The governor of New York, a Democrat, said the ruling was, quote, not just reckless, it's reprehensible. They can't do anything they want, right, to us. What a Democrat turd, anti-white bastard. It's reprehensible that we can't just take away the hard-earned rights that the Creator gives us, but we have to give our lives in heaping, stinking mounds of dead, decaying, and maimed flesh for. What a dishonor. Everybody out there, think about this, everyone out there, every time you have endorsed something like this to give up hard-won liberties, you are disgracing all of the people who gave everything to earn those liberties for us. Think about that. And in how many times in human affairs throughout history have things been done that have actually been noble and heroic? Just look at what happens today. What do countries do today? How often are the acts of countries noble? How often are they heroic? How often do they angle at giving mankind what mankind inherits as a theory, at least, and in some case, a faith from a creator or from nature? How often does that happen? So you think about it, it's probably like 99.9% of the time, humanity is dominated by tyrants who are serving their self-interests. And it's just gross, self-interested slaughter by the hundreds of millions, right? And I guess you don't know their names, so they don't matter, I guess. But in this case, you had people die and get slaughtered and lose limbs and have their whole lives wrecked, on and on and on, for something potentially more noble or at least as noble as anything else that's been done on planet Earth. And here you have people in the United States and other countries across the West who have a greasy, disgusting, lying, sophistical bastard politician get up before them and say, oh, so a psychotic person went to, I mean, if we're in the UK, a psychotic person took some cutlery and went to the subway, stabbed a bunch of people. Well, listen up here, ladies of both sexes. If you just let us take away the right to have cutlery, unless you have a good excuse to have it, then everybody will be safe. Folks, the guillotine is coming. How many more times are you going to give up some hard-won liberty so that you can, in the moment, feel cozy about the prospects for little Johnny or little Susie? These are much better men and women than the vast majority out there coming back from the dead to ensure that you keep the right of self-defense. And every one of you who would bend a knee to a tyrant is a disgusting, just vermin, just cur in the face of those heroes. You should own it too. The governor of New York, a traitor to the United States of America, a Democrat, and therefore traitor to the United States of America, said the ruling was not just reckless, it's reprehensible, pointing to recent mass shootings in New York and Texas. There you have it. There you have it. Crazy people did despicable things, and so therefore the hard-won liberties have to be taken away from all the law-abiding people, as though these crazy people won't still be able to do despicable, disgusting, reprehensible things. Of course they will. Every day they're doing them. Far more people are getting killed with hatchets. Far more people are being murdered with cars. Far more people are being just killed with the hands of their insane assailant. Joe Biden, it's just all this demagoguery when it comes to these politicians, Republican and Democrat alike. Just demagoguery. Just the moment, oh, you're scared, let us take something from you. Boy, we really need somebody to go with a broom of fire into a statesman, not a politician, to go with a broom of fire, metaphorical broom of fire into Washington, D.C. and clean house. Not a businessman talking about a swamp. You're not draining any swamp, buddy. Joe Biden said, quote, this ruling contradicts both common sense and that he doesn't have any idea what common sense is. He wasn't born with any. He wasn't born with any sense at all. Can't even keep his balance on a bicycle. And the Constitution and should deeply trouble us all. So it contradicts common sense and the contradiction. What a lying and what a reckless, irresponsible thing for a corpse in chief to say to the nation about the ruling of the Supreme Court. That's calling into question the legitimacy of the Supreme Court, is it not? Shouldn't he be impeached for that? Where are the Republicans who should be stepping forward to impeach this old bastard, to say he's unfit for the job? Clearly, this guy's unfit for the job. So where are the Republicans that pull him out of office so that Kamala can get in there and do a terrible job and the nation can see just how wretched that deception was, that sees both of these incompetent bastards in power in Washington, D.C.? Where are the Republicans? Well, I'll tell you where they are. They're under their wives' skirts, or they are trying to get under the skirts of children. That's where the Republicans are. So nothing but a bunch of cowards. Not every one of them, just nearly every one of them. Cowards where they feel at all the views of those who voted for them. The vast majority do not. The vast majority of Republicans in office have lied to you to get you to vote for them, and then they forget you. And then they will vote the way that the power holders want until it gets close to election time again. Then they'll stop voting and they'll start making big speeches again so that they can get your money and get your vote. That's what a Republican is today. On the left, outrage is growing over the court's rightward march. It isn't, once again, this is the anti-whites defining the court, but this is how it actually works. This is that actually, unfortunately, those who are conservative minded or patriot minded don't view the courts this way. They think that you have a hard reading of the law written by the legislators, put in place by the people of the United States, and that they have to obey it. They can't go beyond it. And you see that there are these, what are referred to as activist judges, that are anti-white, Democrats. I'm sure just about every single one of them, but anti-white, every single one of them. And they will actually say, in fact, there might be one on the Supreme Court right now who actually said at a, college commencement ceremony, said, oh, we legislate from the bench. Absolutely illegal. So if we did have conservatives, patriotic justices that would legislate from the bench, things would get a lot better real fast. Earlier this week, the court handed down a ruling which attacked the separation of church and state. As soon as Friday, it is expected to undermine or remove the right to abortion. Let's check that out really quickly. Sotomayor accuses Supreme Court conservatives of dismantling church state separation. What's this say? The liberal Justice Sonia has warned that the U.S. court is dismantling the wall between church and state after conservative majority ruled that the state of Maine cannot exclude religious schools from a tuition program. In a dissent to the ruling in Carson versus Macon, released on Tuesday, Sonia wrote, this court continues to dismantle the wall. So in other words, if you are not persecuting white people by way of the religion that most white people practice, which is Christianity, then you are dismantling the separation of church. What? Talk about reprehensible. Talk about an irresponsible thing for a Supreme Court justice to say, because you're not in any conceivable way dismantling the separation of church and state. Back to as soon as Friday, it is expected to undermine or remove the right to abortion, guaranteed since 1973, and to reduce the federal government's ability to cut emissions contributing to the climate crisis. So, in other words, I mean, you have, and I am an ardent lover and protector of the environment. And if things are being done that are damaging the environment, I'm absolutely 100% against it, because we have to live in the environment. We, as Western kind, we love planet Earth. We love our natural environment and the wildlife that lives therein. Having said that, we can maintain the environment. It can be nice and pristine, and our neighborhoods can be pristine, and our families pristine. We can maintain these things and not destroy millions upon tens of millions of working class people's livelihoods by putting the businesses that they work for out of business with onerous EPA regulations and lawsuits and etc. The New York law struck down on Thursday required anyone wanting to carry a handgun in public to prove that they had a proper cause to do so. Really, who got to decide whether or not your life was valuable enough to have self-defense? Think about that. Just really, and if you're the kind of person that says, well, somebody should have the right, well, then I take your right away. I have decided that you do not have the right to your life or to the wholeness of your being. You could be maimed, you could be murdered, and you can't defend yourself. How does that sound now? You happy? No, you see, you're only happy with it when you can deprive it to a white male or white woman or white family. That's the only time you're happy with it, who are not anti-white. They're not anti-white enough. So then you're happy to take away the right to self-defense. So the moment you say that it's okay to take away their right to self-defense or decide whether or not their lives are valuable enough, then I decide that your life is not valuable enough for you to be able to legally protect it. Case closed. The decision in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin renders the law an unconstitutional violation of the Second Amendment right to bear arms. In his ruling, Justice Thomas wrote, quote, apart from a few late 19th century outlier jurisdictions, American governments simply have not broadly prohibited the carry of commonly used firearms for personal defense, nor have they generally required law-abiding, responsible citizens to demonstrate a special need for self-protection, distinguishable from that of the general community, to carry arms in public. The New York law, Thomas wrote, also violated the 14th Amendment, which made Second Amendment rights applicable to the states. Biden pointed to the longevity of the New York gun law. We've been breaking the law for so long. How can you overturn it now? Biden said. Since 1911, the New York state has required individuals who would like to carry a concealed weapon in public to show a need to do so for the purpose, which meant that no one, virtually no one, had the right to defend themselves. You just had to just give yourself over to your rapist or your attacker, your maimer, your murderer. How many lives have been lost as a consequence of these Democrat anti-white, of this Democrat anti-white policy in the state of New York? How many times would people have been able to defend themselves from someone who was also carrying a firearm, or someone who was carrying a knife, or someone who was just much more bigger and stronger and malicious and malevolent? You know, even if a woman is 80 years old and her attacker is 6'7", 250 pounds of raw muscle and dim-witted, caged animal menacing brutality, if she pulls out even a .22 revolver, the tables are even. Think about that. But you took it away from her. You took it away from her. You said she had to prove to some Democrat judge somewhere that she had a need. And since she was a little old white woman, that, I don't know, Democrat judge somewhere, maybe related to a billionaire anti-white, non-white woman, who said, there's some white people who just have to die. And all those white people still love that anti-white wretched bitch. Biden added, as the late conservative Justice Scalia recognized, the Second Amendment is not absolute. For centuries, states have regulated who may purchase or possess weapons, the types of weapons they may use. All of this, of course, is sleight of hand. God, look at the face of this rigor mortis. So I call on Americans across this country to make their voices heard on gun safety. Lives are on the line. Lives have been lost. People have been murdered. People have been beaten to death. People have been maimed. People have been raped, male and female, because they were unable to defend themselves because of people like this, who surround themselves with armed guards. What do you think about them now? Boy, there's got to be a house cleaning, doesn't there? The beautiful thing here is that the court has struck down this illegal law in the state of New York. You may now carry a firearm, and it may well be the case that you don't even need a concealed carry permit at this time, because there isn't a policy there for that. But check it out for yourself to see if that is indeed the case. What this also does, though, is it knocks down those similar or analogous laws, such as we have here in Washington, D.C., across the country. So no longer, I wonder when my father was, and my uncle, not by marriage or blood, but by longevity. I wonder when they were shot by two anti-white non-whites, I wonder if they would have been able to defend themselves had they had a firearm or two of their own. But of course, in D.C., you couldn't have them, because you had to prove to some anti-white Democrat that as a white man, your life is important enough to defend. But this has overturned that. It is a massive victory, and we should be celebrating this. There are so many defeats every time we turn around in our world. Every time we turn around, there's another insolent anti-white attack that ends up in some sort of victimization of our people, of our civilization, ends up in white erasure every time we turn around. And this would have opened the door to requiring, to the requirement all across the country, because immediately the Democrats, anti-whites, and anti-white Republicans would have gone along with it immediately to implement the same sort of law from coast to coast, north to south. It would have been, we're going to decide whether or not your life is valuable enough for you to be able to defend it. And I want also to speak to these people who are sort of fellow travelers of mine who would argue, no, Jason, it's not about self-defense. It's about, and then they read, right out of the Constitution. Please don't bore me with that. Self-defense is your ability to defend yourself from a rapist, a murderer. It's also your ability to defend yourself against law enforcement who have been illegally sent by a tyrant, military that has been legally sent by a tyrant. Self-defense is the kernel of what it is. It is clearly what the individuals who wrote that into the Constitution were thinking. The ability of the individual in its aggregate to defend him or herself, and therefore, ergo, them or themselves, will protect them from a tyrannical government. And it went without saying at that time that the individual could protect him or herself or his or her family from an attack of vagabonds or whatever have you. Today, however, we have to speak to people who don't quite get it, because they've grown up in a nursery room. You have to deal with things as they are around you. And white people, I'm really getting sick and tired of you opening up some sort of rule book. I've been dealing with this for 3 decades in the white sympathetic sphere, opening up a rule book and saying, but the rules, your rules, all right? Come. We got to deal with reality. And if you're too dumb, then you need to get it. If you can't figure it out on your own, then you need to submit yourself to what works and those who do understand. Does that make sense? Stop coming into this. If folks show up and they're like, I've been thinking about this for 27 minutes. Yeah, I've been thinking about it for 27 years. All right? So enough. Big victory here. Big victory. The reverse would have been horrific. It would have been absolutely horrific. None of us would have our lives deemed valuable enough. If you're white and you're just not hardcore anti-white, your life wouldn't have been valuable enough to be allowed to defend. Not only that, there's another positive here. We have this gun bill moving forward. By the way, all of you Republican voters out there, I want you to look at Mitch McConnell. I'm positive he is a corpse. I'm positive he is a corpse. I'm kidding, of course, but he's still a corpse. They got him from the morgue, and he's been dead a long time. And I don't know how they marionette him, but there's got to be strings somewhere. But McConnell and the rest of them, of these Republicans, there's a slew of Republicans going along with this anti-self-defense bill. And you in Kentucky and South Carolina and Texas and all these places voted for them, not because you wanted your right to self-defense taken away. So if you are in any of these states where any of these Republicans now are voting and endorsing this bill that will strip people of their right to self-defense without due process, known as red flag laws, you need to make it a life's mission to revenge yourselves on these lying bastards. You gave them 1 vote or 2, or how many times you voted for these people in the past. Make sure that for every 1 you gave, you prevent them from getting 100. You campaign against them. Put somebody else in charge. I was saying on Jason Goes Political, there's a battle here for the soul, not of the Republican Party, for the soul and identity, not directly of the Republican Party, obliquely, yes, but for the identity and soul of the resistance to the anti-white Democrats. And if you continue to put your faith and money and time into Republicans like Mitch McConnell, you are working for the enemy. And therefore you are the enemy. You are a destroyer of everything you care about. The wonderful thing here is that it may make it more difficult to push this bill through to law, seeing the willingness of the Supreme Court to act in favor of the Constitution and much better men, white men, than we have today. Certainly better than the white men and white women we have today. Much better. Who put these things down into the Constitution, and as a consequence, they rise from the grave and protect your lame asses, your ungrateful, ignoble lame asses out there today. And people seriously, I get too that, I mean, nobody's perfect. The founding fathers aren't perfect. I get it. They got a lot wrong too, but they got a lot right. And it is absolutely incomprehensible when somebody slanders the shit out of these guys that time and again have risen from the grave in this form and saved your lily white ass from oblivion.